process that is happening in China, the moving of all of the people from the country into the ghost cities that have been built in China. Remember I was talking about this a couple of weeks ago. I mentioned the ghost cities. Anyone who's unfamiliar with that, just look up the term ghost cities, just search it on the internet and you'll find that there's been dozens of cities built across China which are all standing there unoccupied. And you've got to wonder what these cities are for. Well, what they're doing now is they're pulling all the farmers out of the farming regions and out of the more rural regions of the country, and they're bringing them to live in all of these cities. And this is being done by the government. It's being done under the guise of a humanitarian project. They now have an initiative they've launched in China that they claim will end all poverty by the year 2020. That's what they're doing. They're finding people in poor districts and poor regions, and they are tailoring a program for these families specifically to lift them out of poverty, is what they're saying. Sounds wonderful, doesn't it? A process which will leave no poor people, no poverty anywhere in China. How delightful for everybody. What they're actually doing is making sure everyone is working, everyone has a job, everyone is in a city, and therefore everyone is subject to the new Chinese surveillance system. They say they want to raise people up out of poverty in China and have the whole process done by 2020. And coincidentally, what they also say is they want to have a complete surveillance state with no dark corners anywhere in China where anybody can hide, where everyone is monitored in every aspect of their lives and everyone is subject to the new Chinese social credit system by 2020. Same thing. And here we see them doing it under the guise of a massive humanitarian project to end poverty. So you can see how they disguise things and where it's really leading. And all governments do this, folks, and make no mistake about it, this is what Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030 is about as well. It isn't just about preserving rural regions and preserving and protecting nature. It's getting everybody into a situation where they can be confined into a concentrated population zone and kept under 24-hour-a-day surveillance in every single aspect of their lives. And like I said, it all sounds very wonderful, lifting people up out of poverty and making sure everyone has a job. But what if you don't want a job? What if you're a farmer? What if your job is looking after your animals, looking after your crops and looking after your family and caring for your house? What if you're an artist? What if you're someone who simply likes living in the country and doesn't want to live in a city and doesn't want to do some government-designated job and take home some government-designated wage and walk between the government-designated lines? What if you want to be someone who lives in your traditional house where your family grew up and you would like your children to be living in the country and experiencing that type of life? Well, under the new system, you simply won't be allowed to. You have to come and live in the city, and if you go and do other things, well, then you'll lose social crediting points, you'll lose purchasing power, you'll be squeezed out of the system, and you'll become an undesirable, and you'll end up in the smart prison. And people will accept that and see that that is okay for that to happen to you, because why would you not be complying with what the government wants you to do? You must be an untrustworthy person. And we're seeing this now in China because many of the people who are being scooped up out of these rural areas and taken to the cities have lived in the country their whole lives. They've grown up as farmers and they simply don't want to live in the city. And so once they're put there, they go, well, what are we doing here? And they pack up and they go back to where they came from, only to find that their house has been destroyed, their land has been razed, it's all been reclaimed by the government, and the life that they had simply doesn't exist anymore because their traditional lands are no longer there, and they don't have any choice but to go and work at some job that they've never done before, that they hate doing, in a city because it's now the only home that they have. And again, all of this being done under the guise of a humanitarian effort to lift people out of poverty. But really, it's not about any of that. It's about surveillance and it's about control. And when you look at the Chinese system, I mean, the people, Rothschilds, Rockefellers, all of the bankers, the banking cartels that have been running the world for so long, are heavily involved in the Chinese system. They love the Chinese work ethic and they would love to see it brought out into all of our countries as well. And it's happening, folks. It's just being done in a more gradual way. I mean, it's a lot easier to get away with in China because the Chinese people are so compliant. But in the West, it needs to be done in a different way. And they're doing it through the surveillance devices that we're all buying ourselves, the Alexas that people are having in their home, the new Google Home device that people are buying. The surveillance apps on their phones, just their phones themselves, the way their phones are taking over their lives. And the way these devices are now being used in court cases as well. You know, your data from your Alexa can be brought in and used to testify against you in a court of law. The data that was recorded on your refrigerator or your clock radio or whatever. The whole surveillance system is being brought online in Western countries as well, the same as the Chinese system. It's just being done in a different way. Chinese will simply roll over on command, but the people in the West need to be tricked into it, and the main way they're going to do that is through fear. You know, once you do have these devices in your home, and once you do realize you're being surveilled in everything you say and do, then you start policing your own thoughts, and society starts policing itself and leading itself into the smart grid, where it gradually becomes compliant simply because it's scared to do anything other than be compliant. Now, I think things will be coming to pretty much of a head in the West pretty soon. I think we're going to see some major events pretty soon. Of course, the QAnon event should be happening next month. We're coming very close to November. People have been sitting back for the last 8 or 9 months waiting for this big event that's going to happen in November. Just coincidentally, of course, we've had Trump just say that it will be difficult to unite the country without a major event. Sounds very reminiscent of the PNAC document for some reason. Not that there will be a false flag. There may be a false flag. There may be something else. There may be a financial crash. Maybe there will be mass arrests. Something to complement the QAnon operation. Because, of course, everyone's been hearing about this for months on end now, and there is a whole movement who's been completely ignoring the smart prison being rolled out and just eating popcorn and sitting back and watching the Q narrative for the last 8 months. All these sealed indictments are going to lead to mass arrests, and the whole world's going to change, and Trump's going to emerge as the savior of mankind on the white horse, come charging out in his shining armor and bring the whole world to safety. I really don't think this is going to happen. I really think Trump is a player the same as everybody else. But still, there is a lot of people waiting for this big event that is about to happen in November. And really, I mean, what they could get away with this, folks, I mean, they would probably be able to introduce martial law, and large sections of the so-called truth community would be fine with that. They would think it was all part of the plan. Trust the plan.